1. A little background about my neighbors. They're actually my stepsister on my father's side and her husband. They split up a plot of land with my parents to build their houses when they first immigrated to Guam. Unfortunately, those two are bad apples that have repeatedly caused conflict with my household over the years. They don't actually live in the house they built, as they're still renting a place somewhere. I'm sure they've planned to move in someday, but for some reason, they don't want to and can't get their own water lines and electrical lines for their house. Back in 2014, they asked my mom if they could connect to our lines and just pay their share. Despite other family members' warnings in the past, my mom still agreed and came to regret it. She got them using electricity without paying their share, and it became a whole incident that involved the police because they were threatening us. They've disconnected their lines, and we've had a lot of tension between us over the years. One time, we caught them collecting water from our faucet. After that, they started erecting fences and barriers using sheets of tin, and going so far as to block our window from which we caught them. They obstructed view and completely blocked access from that side of the house that has an important water line and electrical box and our septic tank. For some reason, we've never done anything about it. They've claimed that part of the land is theirs, and my mom says it might be true, and that my father mistakenly set up our septic tank there. Fast forward to New Year's of 2023, after tensions have died down. My mom made up with the couple, but in the process, they were able to manipulate her into giving them permission for the water and electricity lines again. I voiced my disagreement hard for obvious reasons, but my mom is very gullible. They've supposedly connected to our lines after that, although I suspect they've secretly done that years prior, because of all the barriers they've put up, and I've heard them blasting speakers sometimes. History repeats itself, however, and our utility bill average has gone up a whopping $120, from $100 to $220 a month. My mom should have spoken to them about payment, but in her narcissistic pride, she argued that they should be the ones reaching out to her about payment. I've spent almost 2 years hearing my mom complain about my neighbors not paying their share, as she stubbornly refuses to approach them despite constantly voicing her desire to. I've been taking the brunt of her fury on a tri-weekly basis with nothing getting done, and seeing her bank account wasting $120 every month. A few months even rose up to $200. She has her issues, but I'm sure half of her reluctance stems from the fact that they are very difficult people, and she too is scared about another huge conflict. By some miracle in late October, my mom went to the doctor, and coincidentally found herself waiting in the lobby with the very same couple, as well as another stepsister of mine that she gets along with. Because of my other stepsister's presence, my mom finally gained the courage to confront them about the bills. Obviously, they were furious. They brought up the main point about why she didn't approach them, but also they came up with other excuses. They pleaded with her and even offered to pay the whole bills. When emotion didn't work, they started blackmailing her. It didn't seem like anything was gonna get done until my mom showed them our utility bills, as they've apparently compromised on. It was an obvious attempt to stall, though. I've already reprinted the bills because we threw the originals out a week ago, and my mom hasn't shown them yet. Progress has been done, but now we're back in the same dawdling state as before. It's been about several weeks of tension since then, but now my neighbors have begun to act again. Earlier this year, I moved into a previously unoccupied room right next to the water line and septic tank. They ignored this window before, but just yesterday, I heard them drilling something directly on our house. I peeked out the window and couldn't really see what they were doing. After they saw me, they stopped, but later ended up blocking the window with a tarp. Today I hear them doing more work outside my window. I'm even hearing what seems to be him flattening out cement with one of those flat blade tools. I'm afraid he might be hiding the water lines with cement or even erecting a concrete barrier. We can't see anything because, even from our backyard, they've put up a very high obstruction where we can't see. If you've managed to listen this far, you're probably thinking to yourself, how the hell did you let them get away with this? The simple answer is that me and my mom struggle with mental illness. I've slowly deteriorated because of depression and anxiety. My mom is a narcissist, and I've always suspected she was bipolar, but she finally came down with depression after she got divorced with her ex-husband, and her sister and best friend died. We simply just don't know what to do. Even though I am now the man of the house and seem to be the one with the most rational sense, I can't even confront them on my own. I have a huge fear of my stepsister's husband, due to trauma of being threatened by him when I was a kid, and all the countless violent outbursts he has done to family members growing up. His anger and tone of voice is really that of someone you don't want to mess with. Whenever I hear them arrive or make noise outside, my body gets into a fight-or-flight mode, and I can't relax until I know they're gone. My mom and I can't afford to move out and rent a new place, because rent is hella expensive where I am from. I myself have always wanted to move out from this overall toxic environment, but I can't live on my own in my current condition. We have no choice but to stay here and deal with the bad neighbors. But we don't know what to do. Can someone please tell me how we can deal with this situation? Hellfreezer's note, I think you need to address the issues of where the land borders lie. Figure out what's theirs and what's yours, and if the septic tank is on their property, while it will be an expense, it has to be moved. Secondly, your sister-in-law's husband is using the fact that you are fearful of him to his advantage. He knows if he acts like a big, puffy, aggressive monster, that you won't confront him. Now, it's possible he would react violently, certainly, but most of these people are cowards when confronted. Of course, I'm not saying you should go at him head-on, but you do have recourse, possibly in a legal manner. The rules will change from place to place. I'm not quite sure how things break down in Guam, but they definitely shouldn't be tapping into your electric and water lines. There's really no valid reason, beyond the fact that they would likely have to pay to get them installed, why they can't be setting up their own accounts and having their own lines fitted for their own house. 2. In 2017 to 2018, when I was 18, I lived with my roommates in an apartment in a small town. The building itself was small as well, with about 10 units. We had a new family move in across the hall around the end of 2017 that were kind of odd. It was a grandma, her adult daughter, and her child, who apparently had severe disabilities. She was, I think, bedbound, or at least never left their apartment, and I heard through a neighbor that she had a severe seizure disorder. The mom was the only one of them I ever saw, and she wouldn't say hi back if we passed each other in the hall. She would also often pace up and down our hall in the middle of the night. The doors and walls were thin, and we had a peephole, so we knew for sure she wasn't going in and out of the building. She was just pacing for extended periods of time. There were several times when their apartment door was fully open with none of them around that we could see. Third noticeable detail is that there had been an incident when I was home alone a couple of months prior, where a random man unlocked our door and tried to come in. Before seeing me and running, the landlord and cleaning lady were adamant that it hadn't happened and implied that I had made it up. They also refused to change the lock. This was a private landlord who didn't live in the same town and was very hands-off. Most managing came from the lady, who cleaned the hallways and kept an eye on the place. The landlord himself referred to her as the cleaning lady, but it's worth mentioning that everyone thought they were in a relationship. Bow chicka bow wow. I'll call this woman Betty. She was, without exaggerating, the most unpleasant person I have ever interacted with. Everyone, including our neighbors, had issues with her all the time. She was around what seemed to be more frequently than necessary, like every other day, and often didn't seem to be cleaning, just walking around. She was famous for listening outside our door and knocking to complain if she heard us swear or say something inappropriate. It's worth noting that our door and the neighbors across the way were at the end of the hall. so she couldn't have just been walking by. Every time I ran into her, she seemed aggressive and had an issue. My feet made too much noise walking up the stairs, so I should wear different shoes. The stairs were outside, nobody living underneath, and I always wore plain sneakers. We're gross for not having a doormat. Wait, no, the doormat is in her way. Why am I using the back entrance instead of the main entrance? It just never ended. The day of the incident that got me kicked out, Betty was outside our door and heard my roommate curse in a sentence. Cue the banging on the door. All three of us that were home answered, myself, the swearing roommate, and our other roommate. She started off with her voice very raised, talking about how that was so inappropriate. We need to behave better. This is a family-oriented building. What if someone heard us say that? And then she points at me and says, as best as I can remember, "It's you. I know you're the one causing trouble." And went on to accuse me of being a bad influence. She had already acknowledged she knew which roommate was swearing, so she wasn't accusing me of doing that, just that my presence was somehow a problem. It's worth noting that I was the only woman living with a few guys, and I got the impression in previous conversations that she thought it was an inappropriate living situation. And it got worse. She, fully yelling, demanded I come out into the hall, saying things like, "I know what you did," and trying to get me to confess to doing something. I had no idea what she was talking about, and that really annoyed her. She said she would make me apologize, and knocked on the neighbor's door. We were all like, what the hell do the neighbors have to do with this? But it turns out that the mom and grandma had told Betty that I was sneaking into their apartment and stealing their mail. What in the actual hell? The neighbor didn't say much, but kept nodding to back Betty up as she yelled at me, physically forcing me into the corner and waving her arms around. She kept saying that I must be crazy, called me unstable, and similar stuff as well. My boyfriend and the other roommate are trying to back me up that none of us would ever go into their apartment, but we had seen the door open a few times and it must have been someone else. They also brought up the time someone had unlocked our door, which Betty accused me of making up for attention. Betty was having absolutely none of it, and not really letting us talk. She started saying that I had upset this woman's daughter and caused her to have seizures, and that I needed to go inside and apologize to her face. The mom chimed in that I had traumatized her and made her sicker. I refused to go into their apartment because 1, I didn't do anything, and 2, it seemed unsafe. I was also fully crying at this point. She seemed to take me crying as proof of my instability. Betty whipped out her phone and said she was telling the landlord I'm a thief and crazy. He texted one of my roommates that I had to leave, and that was that. He wouldn't listen to our side and said he trusted the neighbors and Betty. It's been about 6 years since that happened, and it still annoys me to think about it. If they thought I was breaking in, why didn't they call the cops? Or tell the actual landlord? Or do something about it after the first time they thought it had happened? Why did Betty wait until catching my roommate doing something to accuse me? And I still wonder if they actually thought it was me, or if there were even any real break-ins at their unit. Like, did they fabricate the whole thing? If so, why the hell did they hit me so badly? No other tenant ever complained about me or had an issue with me prior to this. And why did they think I made up a stranger unlocking our door? We definitely should have refused to engage with them and spoken to the landlord sooner, but we were young and inexperienced with this kind of thing. I have a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda feelings about it. After hearing about it, my mom was convinced that the landlord and Betty were the ones breaking in, and pinned it on me. Anyway, thank you for listening to my Neighbor from Hell story. 3. So, I've been living in my triplex for about 9 years now with my mom. There have been a few other tenants living throughout the years, some cool, some not so cool, but I've never had this type of experience with my neighbors in the past. So here's the story. 3 years ago or so, a new family moved into the upstairs unit of my triplex. Cool. Everything started off really nice. Everything was cool until they started making odd demands. I smoke weeds, and I've had the neighbors complain about the smell before, which is fine, but here's what happened. I used to smoke out of my bedroom window. The neighbors complained the smell was going in their window and bugging them. They suggested that I smoke on my front patio, so I agreed nicely and started smoking in the front. Things were fine again for about a week, until they again complained about the smell going in their window, and then also made comments about not wanting the house to look or seem trashy because of the scent of marijuana. I told them that I wouldn't smoke there when their window was open, but also expressed that I was well within my rights to smoke on the front patio, regardless of a certain image my neighbors were worried about being portrayed. They never closed their window, so I chose to smoke in the backyard. Now keep in mind, the backyard has always been sort of a sacred place for my family. We take care of it, and also have a shed and a special area just for us in the back. And if the neighbors wanted, they could also do the same thing. Anyways, I would smoke in the back, and the wife from upstairs would start yelling at me and calling me a pothead loser and all sorts of profanities. It got to the point where the landlord got involved and told them that I could smoke in the backyard without anyone telling me anything. Cool. Everything was fine for a couple of weeks again until one morning when I had some friends over and they decided to confront them and start harassing them, calling them the same sorts of names and profanities as previously mentioned. It even got to the point where the husband got into my friend's face. Mind you, she's a 19-year-old girl and is pretty small, saying that he was going to take her down. My mother then intervened, and this is when the situation settled down and they started playing the victim. They started saying we provoked the argument, and basically that it was our fault. What really bugs me about all of this is that a couple of months after all of this, and with there still being constant tension, the wife upstairs begins smoking weed after giving birth to her newborn. How are you going to go from calling me a pothead loser and confronting my friends and all that, to doing the same thing you claim to hate? The neighbor apologized to me and told me that she was going through a lot and the family was having a lot of issues, and I kindly told them that it was okay and that I understood. I agreed to peace because that's all I ever wanted. Things started to get a little annoying when I'd go into the backyard now and find the wife from upstairs hanging in our space, sitting in our chairs. Things were okay though, and I never made a comment. It got weird, and also really annoying, to be quite honest, when the wife started complaining about my guests and saying she felt uncomfortable. We told her that if she felt this way, maybe she should section off her own portion of the backyard. I felt it coming again, more bullcrap. She started smoking beside my mom's window in the back, and of course no one wants smoke in their apartment or house. It's irritating and causes headaches and whatnot. Anyways, we asked about maybe a dozen times, nicely, for her not to smoke beside the window when it's open, just as they used to ask us, except in a nicer, more proper way. This, though, turned into an argument where the wife physically assaulted my mother by spitting in her face. I've had enough with the upstairs tenants and I want nothing to do with them. It's a very uncomfortable situation, but it really bugs me that I've lived here for all these years, and not to mention first, and they still want to act childish and cause drama and arguments for no reason. There are a lot of other things they do to constantly be passive-aggressive. But I do my best to just ignore those actions and live my best life. I live in an upstairs apartment. It's 2 adults, 27 male, 24 female, our baby, 7 months, and 2 dogs, 5 male, 1 female. We were excited to be approved here because family lives in the same complex a few units over. Within 3 days, our downstairs neighbor, late 20s to early 30s male, directly below was yelling out stuff at me on our back patio. I ignored it thinking it wasn't directed towards me. It happened a few more times in the weeks following. My aunt is friends with the woman across from him, so she asked her if he had issues with us, and what they were so they could be addressed. She said she had no clue. One morning, my boyfriend was walking our dogs in red Family Guy pajamas. The neighbor asked if he was a blood. He said no. Then the neighbor asked what he was looking at. My boyfriend said, You just asked me a question. When the neighbor got home, before my boyfriend was finished with his walk, he was yelling about how my boyfriend didn't know who he was effing with. About a month and a half in, we were laying down and hear profanities being screamed through the window outside, and something hit the wall. We paused the show, didn't hear anything outside, so we started it again. Once it started, we hear him yelling, "Bitch!" at the top of his lungs. At this point, my boyfriend went and cracked the back door to listen better. He heard him downstairs, talking with the woman across from him, the one mentioned earlier, telling him she didn't want him getting in trouble. He went on to say he's been arrested, had assault charges and restraining orders, so he's not worried. A week after that, I was out on the back porch smoking a cigarette before work. He comes out yelling something about my dogs peeing on the back porch. As we had already reported the situation to management and were told he's all talk, I decided to no longer ignore it. I said, "We didn't even know what was happening because you don't communicate." At this point, he took his shirt off and was saying he'd beat my butt, saying to not walk our dogs in front of his neighbor's house. I said we can walk wherever it's an apartment and that I'd call the police, which we did. That same night, we heard him screaming through the door how he would stab us. The next day, we had an apology note on our car. We haven't let our dogs on the back porch since, just to avoid the drama, but the problems didn't end there. Since then, he plays loud bass music at all hours, day and night. He bangs on the floor at all hours. He reported us for a noise violation, saying we pounded so loud on the floor it knocked his fire alarm off the ceiling. Possible? That we were running and jumping at all hours. We have a baby that barely crawls. Why would we be doing that? So when we got the complaint, we went to management again and explained the situation. We filed our own noise complaint as well. Since then, we keep the dogs in our room after quiet hours. We don't eat, tiptoe around the house, but he's still banging on the floor when everyone is asleep, waking our baby. Thankfully, our dogs only bark when provoked, so they don't respond, but it's getting exhausting. Today, he went through the entire apartment, banging on each room at least 6 or 7 times. We caught it on recording. We are supposed to email it to management, but I don't even know if there's anything they can do. We were so excited as a family to be taking this step and getting a home for our daughter to stay in, and from the first week it has been issues. At first it was the dogs peeing. Then it was walking in front of his neighbor's back porch, which faces the courtyard. Now it's saying we're making too much noise, and we've done everything we can to accommodate and avoid conflict, as we have a small baby we don't want in danger. Hellfreezer's note. Definitely send that recording on to management. In fact, if you have been recording, keep doing that and send all the noises on to management. If it happens often enough, they might be forced to do something. Also good for your own reference in case you ever have to call the cops on him, then you can prove there's a history of shenanigans. As you said, he's all talk or all mouth, no trousers, as they say. So hopefully you don't have too much to fear from him beyond a bit of posturing, but as you say, you do have the little one to think of. I wouldn't be skulking around my own house for him. He's making noise no matter what you do, so just live your life. Hell, dance a bolero if you feel like it, but make sure you do it within the hours allotted where you can make noise. 5. Let me start this with saying he's a snowbird, which means he only comes to live here for 3 or so months out of the whole year. The house was his wife's mother's, and when she passed, they kept it. My yard isn't kept the tidiest. I've been very depressed and have not been meticulously keeping up with it. However, my grass is mowed, there's no trash everywhere. What I mean by not the tidiest is there's some weeds, some plants that need trimming, and I have my grill supplies on the side. Since the day I moved in, he has absolutely hated me, which I never understood, because I'm a very quiet neighbor. I don't have visitors, I don't play loud music, I keep to myself and don't bother anyone. There was a point where, about a year ago, I thought he was starting to like me. My lawnmower was broken, and he saw me in the front yard for hours trying to fix it. He came over and offered to give it a shot for free. He said he wouldn't pay to put new parts in it, and if he can get it going, he'll give it back. He's an old man with a lot of time on his hands, so I said, what the hell, and let him take it to his house and have a crack at it. After 2 days, he brought it back, started it up, showed me that it's working, then in the same breath told me I have to pay him if I wanted it back. I'm very poor and couldn't afford to pay him to get my lawnmower. I'm a very peaceful and respectful person who doesn't want to fight with neighbors, and I want to keep to myself, so I just let him take it. The very next day, he sold my lawnmower. I just took the L and kept to myself. For a while there, I couldn't mow my lawn because of it, which is where I think the deep hatred for me started. Because he got much more mean to me after my lawn wasn't being mowed. Thankfully, a lawnmower was gifted to me, so I am now able to mow it. Skip forward to this week. He's been yelling at his wife and other neighbors about how I'm such a scumbag and how my house looks abandoned and how I am disgusting and all that. Again, I just take a deep breath and mind my own business. However, yesterday a police officer showed up at my house. He stated that someone had made a call stating that I have a ton of animals that I don't take care of. Of course, I let the police officer in and let him take a look around. He was able to see that I only have 4 cats, and they're fat in a healthy way, with beautiful coats. Now, my entire living room is dedicated to them with cat trees and shelves with carpet all over. However, it brought me so much anxiety because I am a 24-year-old doing my best with very little income, and I've been very depressed. So the inside of my house is quite a mess. The officer ended up leaving, satisfied, told me he saw no issues because I didn't have a ton of animals, and that my cats were very well taken care of. I am still shaken up about the whole ordeal and have been having panic attacks all day. I just don't know what to do. If he's going to make a fake report to Animal Services, what else is he going to do? I have a camera set up in my front yard. Honestly, it's garbage. I'd like to get a new one, but I can't afford it right now. I put up a no trespassing sign, and I think from now on if he wants to yell about me, I'll have to go out there and ask him if he wants to talk, but I'm honestly so panicked, and I just want to live my life to myself. What do I do? Hellfreezer's note, well, first thing what you do is the next time you speak to the police, you point out that your neighbor stole your lawnmower, because that is what happened. No agreement was made between you that you would pay him to repair the lawnmower. He offered, the suggestion being that it was a kind neighborly act. Neighbors occasionally do nice things for each other, even if you don't know them that well. Secondly, security cameras can be very expensive. What you might want to do is have a look on eBay or any other sites like that. You might have something local that does quite well. I recently in the UK discovered a service called CEX, which sells used items. As long as you don't mind it being used, but in working order, maybe a few scuffs on it, but otherwise working, you may be able to get a decent camera or two, or maybe even a whole camera setup for a reasonable price. Fact of the matter is, sometimes people just upgrade to a better thing and they want to get rid of the old one. So that might be a viable option for you in the meantime. I do appreciate that we can't always get the things we want, as money is very, very tight these days. Really, the best thing that you can do here is just smile and wave. Don't let him know he's getting to you, even if he is, because he wants the satisfaction of knowing that he's getting to you. Don't be too worried about the police showing up again, because you've done nothing wrong. You know you're doing nothing wrong. And as you say, you're dealing with depression, but even while dealing with depression, you're taking care of the basics. It doesn't have to be pretty. You're keeping things maintained. You don't have to meet his standard for how you live your life. And I really do hope you feel better soon. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours episode 25. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and subscribe. And if you'd be so good, do support me on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. Even $1 or so a month is very helpful. Of course you don't have to, but it is appreciated. Okay, no more business today, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. Today's question is: what is the most appealing part about the holiday season for you? Do you get to see family members you haven't seen all year? Is it have you got that uncle that, he always does this party piece and it's always so nice to see him? Or is it something else? I mean, speaking for me personally, I just like the food. That's kind of the only draw for me. I'll get various foods that they only release at that particular time of year, and that's really it for me. But let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. Today's answer comes from Naughty Neighbours 23 and was also seasonal related. It was, do you have seasonal foods that you're quite fond of? Today's answer comes from Rob Funkhauser. I love me some eggnog. I've never had eggnog. The sooner it's in the stores, the better. For some odd reason this year, it's fairly scarce in my area. Now, I can't have my seasonal fireball and eggnog drink. I recommend you check out Amazon, Rob, if that's something you're comfortable purchasing from. They may be able to sell you a multi-pack of eggnog to meet your fireball-related needs. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. Well, actually, I'm going to head out. Well, not right now. I'm going to sleep, then head out several hours later after I wake up. Although technically today, it is Monday. After I yell at the British gas people because they still haven't properly activated the meter. It's been 10 days. I was told it would be 2 days. Then I was told it would be between 5 and 7 days. And it's still not active. Because of course not. Also, I discovered something interesting about Reddit. As you know, I get 98% of my stories come from Reddit. The rest come from subscriber submissions. kingofthecities@gmail.com if you want to send one in. Past few weeks I've been feeling not getting as many responses back as I used to. And then I thought, it's the time of year. It can happen this time of year. Then I started noticing I've got old Reddit on my work PC and I've got new Reddit on the one downstairs because I look at different subreddits. And I prefer the newer version because it's got a dark mode and it's easier to read Star Trek message boards and things. And I noticed they were giving me different numbers telling me how many messages were in my inbox. So I started looking closer. And then I realized that for at least 5 months, because I've gone back 5 months so far, I'll keep going until I run out, I've been getting messages from people that I have not responded to. So what's happened is I've been getting messages coming back saying, yep, sure, go ahead, you can use my story. And I haven't noticed because it's not showing up as a new message. So far, without having sent a single message to gather for the next week's stories, I've got 3 videos ready to go, including the one I just recorded, which was actually an extra one I had to record because I was struggling to get videos completed last week because as the messages weren't coming in, but they were coming in. I just wasn't seeing them as frequently as I should have. But I know about the problem now, so I can be a bit more observant, so that at least fixes that, because the messages are coming back, I'm just not seeing them right away. I have to go looking for them. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening. And take very good care of yourself.